So what I have here is Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. This is essentially Pandemic with a Cthulhu theme or skin on it, but there are some different aspects to actually how the game plays, and I just want to bring this up because I think it's a really interesting concept in reskinning games in general. So first of all, instead of having individual locations, there's only 4 like burgs, essentially, and your tokens, or clue cards as they call them here, that solve the disease of the cultists are just those 4 colors. There's Arkham, Kingsport, Dunwich, and Innsmouth. And there aren't like a whole bunch of different locations getting you different colored cards, but you still have to get 5, I believe, 5 of those cards to a specific location and deposit them to close the gate and thus win the game. There's 4 gates in the game. You have to close them just like the regular Pandemic has their diseases. It's pretty much the same thing on that front. And in this deck, you also have the Epidemic card. In this one, it's called Evil Stirs, and it causes bad things to happen. But one of the real big differences in this game is that when Evil Stirs, as opposed to the Epidemic card in Pandemic, we don't just move the card counter up. You see, each turn after everybody takes their turn, we're going to be drawing from this deck and adding cultists to the board. You only draw 2 of those cards until this goes up, this row of cards here. So when I mentioned that the number of cards we draw goes up, we also reveal old ones and they do bad things. So it's not just the number of cards that we draw, but also the bad things happen. For instance, this great old one says, to walk out of a location with 2 or more cultists, you must first defeat a cultist at that location. It just means you have to remove one of the cultists from the location before you can leave. Simple, but it does add some complexity to the game. Once you get to this card, you'll be drawing 3 of these cards at a time, so these can be pretty frustrating, just like any Epidemic card in basic Pandemic. The other element of this that is really interesting to me is that when you are asked to place cultists down, and you must place them in a location where you would be placing the 4th cultist, it doesn't act like Pandemic in that it explodes or outbreaks. Instead, you just do one of these cards, and that's bad enough. But in the rulebook, it specifically says so. Right here in the rulebook, there's a little block of green text that actually states, unlike Pandemic, there are no outbreaks or chain outbreaks in Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. That little block made me want to do the entire thoughts video for Reign of Cthulhu Pandemic, because it specifies and sort of solves the preconceived notion of how Pandemic works for the new players. So when you come into this game, you go, well, it's Pandemic Cthulhu, it must be the same as Pandemic, but they have to write in the book, it's slightly different from Pandemic in this way, and it lets you know. Not only is that a good way to write a rulebook, but just a good, like, common sense addition to teaching a game that people may feel like they already know. So I highly recommend this game, actually. Even if you just like Pandemic and want something a little bit different, these cards alone up at the top make things very different. The relics in this game, there's a lot of them. These relics are just like the special abilities, like the airlift or any sort of other abilities that were in Pandemic, but there's a lot more in this game, so you get to see a lot more variety. There's a lot of other stuff going on. There's sanity as a health meter for your guys, so they can go insane. That's one way to lose, actually, is your dudes can go insane, which is kind of fun. But yeah, that's Pandemic Cthulhu. And thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, feel free to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, tap your screen, and hit the little plus dude that shows up like over here for Instagram, and join us on IGTV, all that stuff.